Welcome to our today's lesson. In this very video, we are going to be looking at the term Limiti Massimo Generale di Velocità. Limiti Massimi Generali di Velocità. So, in English, this simply means, the maximum speed or the maximum kilometer you are allowed to drive on a particular road. So if you look very well, so you will see the sign here. So this very sign that you are seeing here, this very sign, so is known as limiti massimo di velocità. Limiti massimo di velocità. So the maximum kilometer you are permitted to drive on a particular road. So this very sign is always found at the border of Italian. So the symbol or the sign is simply saying the maximum speed you are permitted to drive. So now let us quickly consider the various categories of road here in Italian and the maximum speed you are allowed to drive in any of these categories of road. So now let us quickly look at it. It says è quello in figura è un segnale di limiti massimi generali di velocità. So it's simply saying that this very symbol is a sign which tells you the maximum speed you are permitted or allowed to drive on any road here in Italy. So, and it says questo segnale indica i limiti massimo di velocità che valgono in Italia nel primo di riquadro o è indicato il limite massimo di velocità nei centri abitati. So what is simply saying here is that in this very symbol that we have here, where we started by saying that the symbol simply signifies the maximum kilometer or the maximum speed you are permitted to drive on the road of Italian. So number one is starting with this, where we have this 50. So this 50 is one of the categories of road we have here in Italian, and it simply said that on this very category of road, the maximum speed that you are permitted to drive is 50. Now, what is the name of this road? Now, that is what we are going to be looking at. It says, nel primo quadro è indicato il limite massimo di velocità nei centri abitati. So it's simply saying that this very road, this first one that have the maximum kilometer of 50 is known as the centro abitati. When we are talking about centro abitati, what are we simply talking about? So these are the roads that that can be found inside the city. The term centro abitati simply means a city road, a road that can be found inside a town. So, and it simply said that on this very road, you as a driver driving on this road, the maximum speed that you are permitted to drive is 50. Your speed must not exceed 50. But in some cases you can drive 70. But based on this very topic, the maximum speed you are permitted to drive in the road of Italian whenever you are driving in centro abitati is 50. Take note of that. So, and again, it also says another category of road we have here in Italian is autostrada. take note of this, is autostrada. It says sulla autostrada il limite massimo di velocità è di 130 km. So it simply means that in autostrada, the maximum speed or the maximum kilometer that you are permitted to drive is 130. Among these categories of road that we have here in Italian, so the one that permits the maximum, the maximum speed is autostrada. Autostrada in English is simply known as the highway. So here in Italian, whenever you are driving on this road, so all you need to take into proper consideration is that on this road you must not drive a speed that exceeds 130 kilometers. So the maximum speed you are permitted to drive on this road is 130 kilometers. But in some characteristics, you are permitted to also drive 150. But based on this topic, the maximum speed you are permitted to drive, because this very sign, indicates what a law. So the maximum speed you are permitted to drive is 130. Take note of that. So when we are talking about autostrada, you can see it here. This is autostrada. And most of the signboard in this very road, are always indicated with the color of green. So, and the maximum speed that you are permitted to drive on this road is 130. Take note of that. So, we are going to be looking at another one again. So, another one we have again is extraurbane principale. So this very one is the one close to autostrada. Is the one close to autostrada. Is more like a highway road as well, but the speed is different from that of autostrada. So in this kind of road known as the extraurbane principale, the maximum speed that you are allowed or permitted to drive on this road is 110. Just take note of them, 110. So, and the last is the extraurbane secondario. The extraurbane secondario. So you can see it. In extraurbane secondario, the maximum speed you are permitted to drive is what? Is 90. Now let me take you to what we are simply talking about here. So this is the sign. And this very sign is always found at every border here in Italian. So it simply tells about the maximum speed so you are allowed to drive on each and every road here in Italian. So here in Italian we have different categories of road. So number one, we have the centri abitati. The centri abitati is the least among every categories of road. So in the centri abitati simply means this is a kind of road found inside the city. When we are talking about inside the city, in other words, we are simply talking about something like this, a place where people live. So in this kind of road, the maximum speed you are permitted to drive here is 50. Take note of that. And again, we have the extraurbane secondario. In this kind of road, is the one close to centri abitati. So extraurbane secondario, when we are talking about extraurbane secondario, the maximum speed that you are permitted to drive on this road is 90. Take note of it. So talking about extraurbane secondario, in other words, we are simply looking at this kind of road. The road permits, a velocity, the maximum velocity of 90. You cannot drive more than 90 in this very kind of road. So the maximum speed that you are allowed to drive in this very kind of road is 90. Take note of it. So take note of that. So another one again, we have, the extraurbane principale. In extraurbane principale, so the maximum speed you are, allowed to drive in this kind of road is 110. 110. So lastly, and we have the autostrada, which is known as the highway. So this is the very category of road that permits the highest speed so far. So in this kind of road, the maximum speed that you are allowed to drive is 130. So take note of these things. So by the special grace of God, we have some questions to quickly answer based on this very video. So number one question says, il segnale raffigurato. Number one question simply says, il segnale raffigurato viene posto in vicinanza della frontiera Italia, visibile da conducente provenienti dallo stato estero. What he's talking about here is that this very sign is always found at the border of Italy, placed at the border of Italy, so that whenever someone is driving from another country, proveniente da stato estero. Estero simply means another country. So this sign is always found at every border of Italy, which enable people driving from another country to know the maximum speed that they can drive on every road of Italy. So the answer to this one is true, which is a vero. So number two, it says il segnale raffigurato indica i limiti massimo di velocità generale che vengono in Italia. So this very sign only functions here in Italian. So the question says that this very sign, so it functions here only in Italian. So which enable the people to know the maximum on speed that they are allowed to drive on every road here in Italian. So, and it's also vero, it's true. So number three again, it says il segnale raffigurato indica nel primo riquadro in atto il limite massimo di velocità nei centri abitati. So this very one, so it also talks about the maximum speed that you are allowed to drive in a road found in a city. A road found in a city. City simply means a place where people live. So, and the answer to this one is also vero. So, number four, it says, il segnale raffigurato indica in 90 km il limite massimo di velocità su strada extraurbano secondario. So don't forget, during our explanation, we simply say that in extraurbano secondario, the maximum speed that you can drive in this kind of road is 90 km. So this one is also vero. Number five, it says il segnale raffigurato indica in 110 km il limite massimo di velocità sulla strada extraurbana principale. So in extraurbano principale, the maximum speed that you are allowed to drive is 110. Take note of that. So, and this very question says in extraurbano principale, so the maximum speed that you are allowed to drive is 110, and which makes it vero. So number six, it says il segnale raffigurato indica in 130 km il limite massimo di velocità sulla autostrada. So we says that in autostrada the maximum speed that you are allowed to drive is 130. You can see it here. So this is autostrada. The maximum speed that you can drive with this kind of road is 130. So take note of that. That one is also vero. Number seven, we say il segnale raffigurato indica in 90 km il limite massimo di velocità nei centri abitati. So this one is falso. The reason why it's falso is simply say that in centri abitati, which is a road found inside the city, that the maximum speed that you are allowed to drive on this very road is 90, and is not true. So in centri abitati, so this is, you can see it here. So the maximum speed you are allowed to drive on this very road is 50. So the answer to this question is falso. So number 8, it says il segnale raffigurato indica il numero di autostrada in Italia che si possono percorrere senza pagare il pedaggio. So what I simply say is that this very sign is talking about in highway. So the kind of road that you can drive without you paying anything. So he's not talking about that. So this very sign simply, simply means the maximum speed that you are allowed to drive. So on the road, this very one is also fast. So number 9, he says il segnale raffigurato i 130 km, il limite massimo di velocità su strada extraurbana principale. So extraurbana principale, the maximum speed you are permitted to drive in this kind of road is 110. So you can see it here. This is extraurbana principale. So the maximum speed is 110. And the question says that in extraurbana principale, you can drive 130. So it's fast, so you can't. So number 10, it says il segnale raffigurato si trova all'ingresso di ogni città. So it's fast. So we say that this very sign it's always found at the border of Italy, not in the beginning of every city. So this one is fast. So lastly, which is number 11, it says il segnale raffigurato indica il limite minimo di velocità che vengono in Italia. So this one is fast because the sign does not say the minimum speed you are permitted to drive. The signs indicate the maximum speed you are permitted to drive. So this very one is fast. Now let us look at so you can see it here. We have zero error. This simply means we have no error. Take note of it. This sign simply means the maximum di velocità. So the maximum speed you are permitted to drive here in Italy. So in this very road, we have 4 categories of road. Number 1 is the centro abitati, where you are permitted to drive just only 50. So we have extraurbana secondario, where you are permitted to drive only 90. So as maximum, we have the extraurbana principale, where you are permitted to drive only just 110. So lastly, we have the autostrada. So this one is the the highest among other categories. So in this very kind of road, you are permitted to drive 130 as maximum, maximum di velocità. So take note of these very things, and do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and click on the notification button as well, so that whenever we have any videos, so you will be the first to be notified. Thank you and stay blessed.